Alderman Arnowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Carter. Chairman Schmidt.
Here.
4 present, you have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you all for being here. I believe that we have a board bill that should not be controversial since we're accepting money. And I think Bill Rata and Director Wessels are here to discuss it in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, sponsors, and co-sponsors of the bill. Board Bill 196 authorizes the city to accept a $2.5 million grant, lead hazard grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grant would run from mid-November of this year to mid-November of 2017. So it's a 3-year grant. The city departments that would be working on this grant are the Building Division, the Health Department, and CDA in various roles. With me today is Bill Rata, the Director of Housing Programs for CDA, and Bill is the guy that put the grant together. This is a very labor-intensive grant application. He's done it before. He spent 3 weeks on it in, I guess, September and October. So he's very familiar with not only the grant application, but how the program works. So I'm gonna, if any of you have questions, or Bill, why don't you add
Sure.
to what I've already said?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk about the grant. So it was a competitive grant. St. Louis was one of 13 cities to receive this type of grant throughout the country. And we're going to remediate 180 units of lead hazards. The building division is providing $625,000 in matching funds to support the grant. We're allocating about $1.8 million to the building division, $101,000 to the health department, and $420,000 to CDA. The building division is going to be responsible for doing lead inspections and risk assessments. They also are going to write the scopes of work. They will award the contracts. They'll monitor the projects while they're going on. They do clearance testing when the work is done. And they also will assist families who have to temporarily relocate while the work is being done. And they'll kind of oversee the whole construction component of the grant. The health department, they're going to do education and outreach, and they will do screening. They'll test the children. That's done for free at the health department. Parents can have their children screened by their pediatrician if they like, but it is a requirement of the grant that the kids have to be tested. And in CDA, what we do is we are responsible for the administration of the grant. We do oversight and manage the grant. We do monitoring of all the program partners, and we do the reporting to HUD, and then our staff also processes all the applications for the grant. We do the intake, we do the grant closing paperwork, and we process the payments to the contractors. And then finally, there is some funding for some subcontractors that in order to get the grant, you have to utilize certain nonprofits who meet certain criteria. So for instance, we're funding DeSales, a community housing corporation, and what they're going to do is they're going to train low-income workers to be employed in the lead abatement industry. So it'll be kind of like on-the-job training, and they will actually remediate units as well. And then we're giving Catholic Charities, they're also providing relocation assistance, and in some cases, people may be permanently relocated because lead might be the least of the worries in their unit. So they might need to move to another apartment that's lead safe, doesn't have any health hazards, doesn't have any safety hazards, things like that. So they provide funding kind of to help with their first and last month's security deposit. And then we have funding for a company that does our database maintenance and We have a web-based portal, and all our projects flow through this portal, so they provide the maintenance for the database. So in a nutshell, that's a grant, like Fred mentioned, it's a 3-year grant, and we're just happy for you to consider it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Alderwoman Vice Chair Flowers.
Thank you. Would this also include multi-unit rental apartments? Would they be eligible?
Yes. Yeah.
So how does that work if someone this is like they're collecting rent, but they're not, they don't have any responsibility at all to make the apartments, let's say? How's that handled on a case basis?
Okay. Well, first, we base it off the tenant's income as opposed to the landlord's income, all right? And quite often, when we do the risk assessment, one inspection, you know, we may notice that the building inspectors may notice, hey, there's some other hazards in this building, and they will ask the landlord to fix those before we do the lead work. But, yeah, multifamily units are eligible.
Okay. And how much would you say, one single family home it would take to remediate? What do you think the dollar amount?
It's gonna depend on the size of the home. I mean, you know, so far this year, we've averaged about 9,500. Obviously, some houses are smaller, but then if you have a 3-story
Right.
house,
Right.
a cavity or something like that, it's gonna be
Right.
maybe 19,000. But then, that average I quoted also includes apartments, and, those might average around 4,000 or 5,000.
And this isn't the same restrictions like a forgivable anything, it's just, this is,
It's a grant for
Right.
owner occupants. This year, it's kind of a new thing. HUD wants us, for the landlords, to do a 3-year forgivable loan. So it'll be prorated, it would be forgiven in its entirety after 3 years.
so the 3 years would then be, I guess, violated if the owner sold the building?
Sold the building, and the prorated portion would come back to the program, and go back into the pool, and we can help more people with it. Usually rental properties don't turn over
No,
that
no.
much,
So,
Well,
Unfortunately, yeah, well.
the folks have gone through our grant, haven't they?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, no questions.
All right, Alderman Bauman.
Is there, let's, going back to the multifamilies and the inspections, is condemnation, like the Project 87 where the police take a building inspector with them, is there an inspector who goes in and says, hey, this just has to be shut down when something's that
That's
bad?
never happened to
No,
my
okay,
knowledge.
all right.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
But-
generally, these are
'Cause
just.
you mentioned permanent relocation, when things are just too bad to even exist.
Yeah, they haven't, to my knowledge, condemned the unit, but, we know that this is not an ideal place for you to live in.
Sure.
Let's find you another place.
But if there's other violations that just are just so glaring, what
I
somebody's
think
trying
they
to
will
cash in.
report that to the district.
Okay, but there's no chance of taking an inspector saying, hey, this is just, that's why some of these people just keep, I don't have as a bigger problem as many other
I see what you're
aldermen do.
saying. Yeah.
But, it's, some of these people just, the landlords specifically take advantage of the situation.
Right.
That's the biggest problem. The one guy, he's photocopying the bills and he gives them to him, the gas bills and electric bills. That way they don't know, there's no way of getting it for the conservation. So, because the tenant came into me and says, so I said, well, great, here, let me have those.
Right.
Cause, and I walked over to the house, the guy let me in, I was just going, get it, this is just, so I didn't know if there's any chance of taking an inspector along here and actually condemning.
I think they will, they'll report it. if,
Okay.
If they need to.
Alrighty, that's my only comment, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the thorough explanation. Currently, we fund this, I believe, on fees that are attached to building permits, except for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, so that's our basic source of funding for lead abatement. I think you guys also get some additional funds, because I know when we do some of our Community Development Administration block grant funding projects, if there's an issue with regard to lead, you guys usually work on that. How do you guys fund that? Because you are doing a lot of work there, I think.
Yeah, when you're using block grant or home funds, there is a requirement that you have to identify the lead hazards and remediate them. So that's just a regular part of our programs, whether it's a rehab through housing production, whether it's through the home repair program. If somebody though, going through one of those programs is eligible for the lead grant, you know, there's children 6 or under, or there's a pregnant woman, we'll use lead grant funds to do the lead work. So we try and, you know, leverage as much as we can through other sources.
So we have an existing
Right,
federal grant.
but
that
this
we're
would,
working with.
but this
Right.
will allow us to get an additional 180 units. And you count the 180 units by each apartment or each living space as opposed to a four-family isn't just one unit, it'd be
It's
four
4 units, right, yeah,
Okay.
right, they don't count buildings, they count units.
Right, and so how will these additional 180 come to you? Will it, I'm assuming it'll be if health identifies certain locations, if the building
Mhm.
division identifies certain locations, if landlords come to you with
Right,
particular locations. So can this be vacant buildings? Because I thought what we were really doing was trying to identify buildings that were occupied with children under 5, for instance.
yeah, good question, so HUD, under the current grant that we have now, kinda after it was awarded, and our, that was a 3-year grant also, it's currently in its kind of closeout phase.
Okay, so
Um,
that's important to know too.
yeah.
Okay.
So HUD actually kind of changed the rules, that.
Really?
Yeah, you had to have, can you believe that? You have to have a child in every unit, is what they said.
Okay,
So the vacant units, they only allowed us to do 10% of our pledged number of units can be vacant. Okay, so for this grant, that would be 18 units can be
Wow.
vacant. However, what we're gonna do under this grant is, let's say you have a 4-family and only, let's say 2 of the units have kids, the other 2 don't, and maybe 1's vacant, all right? We use the HUD grant funds for the units with the children.
Mhm.
The other units will use the lead remediation fund, to, you know, make those lead safe, because it doesn't make sense to do 1 unit in a 4-family and it's got new windows and the other 3 don't, you know, and, a point you made earlier as far as how people get into the system, most of the cases we get with children are actually from households where the kids have not been poisoned yet.
Mhm.
So by us doing this remediation, we can prevent the poisoning from taking place. So that's encouraging. You know, unfortunately, we do get referrals from households where the children have already been poisoned. But most of our referrals, and a lot of it's just by word of mouth, you
Yeah.
know. But health department, building division, landlords, all those sources, owner occupants with kids, they call us and we can help them.
So when you say children for these 180,
Mhm.
is that anybody under 17 or you're counting just under 5?
6 and
6 or
under.
under.
Our pregnant woman.
And I was reading the media thing that the mayor sent out, and it talked about in 2003, they started that comprehensive action. 13.6 of the children that were tested had the high levels of lead, and at that point it was, I think they were looking at 10 micrograms, now we go down to 5 micrograms.
Right.
And currently, in their tests, there's been only 1.7%, so we're really making some good progress that we need to keep
Right,
working.
absolutely, yeah, I mean, you have to compare apples to apples, so the 1.7 is at the 10,
Is that the 10%?
yeah, not the
Okay.
5.
All right.
Okay, but that's, yeah, tremendous strides have taken place.
Okay, any other questions? If there aren't any, if we have a motion to send it out of committee with the 2 pass recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You add my name to the litany of
Please,
co-sponsors.
anybody else who wants to be added?
I would also like to be added.
Okay, fantastic. Please call the roll.
Alderwoman Flowers,
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Arnowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Carter, Chairman Schmidt.
Aye.
4 aye votes do pass.
thank you all for being here, and thank you, I keep saying Alderman Wessels.
Thank you, and thank you.
Bill
Yeah, thanks for
Roth,
everybody
thank you.
for showing up.
No,
Yeah,
no
and
problem.
you always-
I was worried about it.
you
Dan,
really
it's getting
showed
scary
up.
that we're in a type of seniority list here.
I know, isn't that something?
The
Isn't that
owners-
something? I-